Please be advised that Little Miss Recap contains adult language. Hey guys, welcome to Little Miss Recap, the podcast where we talk about things 2 weeks after they've happened. My name's Amy Archer. I'm your host. I'm here with my favorite therapist, Tess Brigham from the Psych Legal Pop podcast. Hi, Tess.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Tess and I were talking about a whole host of things today, and we decided that we're going to talk a little bit about Garrison Brown at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we won't put it at the beginning. We're going to talk Love is Blind. Mm-hmm. But if you guys are Sister Wives fans and you're interested in hearing a little bit of a chat about Garrison and what has happened in that fandom, you can hang on to the end and we'll do something there.
All
right. So why don't you tell us, Tess, what's going on over at Psych Legal Pop? What are you guys doing?
Well,
what's happening over there?
What's happening? Party? Well, we have been covering Love is Blind, and but we finished, and we've been covering Seeking Sister Wives, and I know you are too. Boy, is that a show! I had
Garrett
not watched this show.
is everything I need to harness my Cody Brown rage.
Yes, that is true. That is very true. But my God, that man loves a tank top. I mean, just a tank top.
Oh, yes. Yes. Did you watch all seasons or is this your first?
No, this is the first time I knew about what's the couple that they were very famous because I'd seen some episodes in the first season. What were their names? The something family. I have to look them up.
Is it the Snowdens?
Yes, Snowdens. Thank
Dimitri
you.
And,
I knew about the
Ashley?
Snowdens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I knew a bit about their story and what was going on. So I'd watched a few episodes of the first season and then I don't know, I stopped watching and now I really want to go back and I just have to find
you have
the
to because you have to see My Love Sidian. You have to see him.
Oh, Sidian.
And,
okay.
Sidian and Tasha, they're in season, I want to say 3 and 4.
Oh, okay.
But I love him. He's right now he's selling a book. He's writing about personal mythos, which I'm totally into.
Okay.
He's got this Willy Wonka type character going that he's doing his social media. I'm here for him. He's just he's really, really smart and artistic and kind of out there. And that's what I love. So there you go. There you go.
Oh, okay. That's a different personality for this show.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah. So yeah, we're doing that. And we've got a very exciting announcement on Wednesday the 20th. I'll just tease that.
You need to tell me what that is when we're off air.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
But it's
I've been hearing this and I'm waiting.
You're going to be like, oh, it's just that?
Okay. Yes, I think I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you guys I know you guys do documentaries a lot. Do you have anything coming up doing that?
Well, this Thursday, we are going to be talking about the NFL because we had our Uncle Bill, who we talk about on the show, who's our semi-producer. He worked for the NFL for 20 plus years as a substance abuse program director. So we're just talking about all the big picture NFL and just playing sports and, this less about sort of the controversies, but more about this, right? The documentaries like Last Chance U or Cheer, right? This idea of what drives people to keep trying and trying and trying, like going to a junior college for 4 or 5 years for this dream, right?
Yeah.
Did you watch Cheer?
No.
That show, the network's okay.
Mm-mm.
If you haven't watched Cheer, you probably don't, because that is a great documentary. But that's a whole.
I've heard of it, and I actually heard it was really good, but it didn't. Yeah.
Well, what happened was the first season was great. It sort of took everyone by storm, and then the second season was sort of this typical, right? What does fame do to people? And then all of a sudden, things that people were doing come out to the light, and then you're like, oh, you're not quite the person that we thought you were.
All right.
So sort of typical.
Check it out.
Yeah.
I'll check it out between playing. I have this iPad game I'm playing, Cooking Fever. I keep talking about it to everybody. Between playing that and solving murders and watching trash, I'll fit it in somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll fit it in somewhere.
Yeah. But we're going up to our, because we grew up in Mendocino County in California, and we're going up there this weekend. We're going to go talk to our father about all the stuff that happens up there. Jim Jones, Steven Stainer.
Oh my God. So much shit has happened up there.
I'm watching the truth about murderer.
I'm watching The Truth About Jim. Did you see this?
I've heard about it. It
on
is Jim
Max. It's
Jones?
really
It
good.
is
No,
Jim
no,
Jones? No,
we think
okay.
it's Jim Jones because it looks like Jim Jones and
Oh.
it's the truth about Jim, but it's some guy that was this young woman is doing it. It was her step-grandfather, and
Yes.
he's
Oh, I've
like,
heard
I
about
think
this.
he was
Yes.
a murderer,
Yes.
and in the beginning, they're talking about, like, all the crazy unsolved murders from California,
Yes.
specifically, like, Northern California,
Yeah.
and how it was, like, the murder capital of the world in the
Yes.
'70s, and I'm like,
Well,
"Ooh."
yeah, and up when you go up but north of the Bay Area, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but it's just
Mhm,
lots of land, and it was known for many, many years before marijuana was legalized, like the Golden Triangle, the Emerald Triangle, because
mhm,
there were people just living out in the woods, making meth, selling weed, growing weed,
mhm, mhm.
and you could hide up there very easily. So they
Yeah.
found Polly Klaas's murderer. He was up there in like a trailer
Oh,
off of things.
okay.
They found Steven Stainer, the kidnapper. They found him like
Yep,
right in front of the Palace Hotel downtown Ukiah. Like
yep.
Ukiah and that whole area, because Ukiah is the county seat of Mendocino. So
Mhm.
even though it's this teeny tiny little town, it's sort of where everything happens. So we're gonna go
Yeah.
up there, and little did we know our father and mother had been recruited by Jim Jones more than once. Apparently, Jim Jones and his
Whoa!
little faction was out there in the
Whoa.
70s trying to get people. And like
Oh,
they
yeah.
had wined and dined, wrote my mom letters. Mom's like,
Yeah,
oh,
and
yeah, let me see if I can find those letters,
they really presented themselves as, like, progressive and
Hmm.
hippie and, like, it was a big thing that he was inviting black couples into his what would you call that? His flock, I
Yes,
guess,
yes.
just, kind of being very progressive for the time, I guess, and
Yeah.
for a church at the time. And so he was telling everyone like, "Come on, I'm this loving guy, da da da." And it started off that way. This message of like inclusion and love
Hmm.
and then it just took a turn. And I don't know about you, but I could go down rabbit hole with that whole
Yeah.
thing. Oh
Oh,
my god,
yeah.
I'm so.
Yeah.
And then did you listen to the podcast and you could hear like the footage, the audio tapes from when they're drinking the Kool-Aid and you hear the
Oh
kids
my gosh.
crying and it's
No.
like, "Oh, it's so bad."
What podcast is this?
I don't know, I'll send it to you if I could find
Okay.
it, but I
Yeah.
listened to it, it's like 6 hours long, and I was listening to it, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was wild, but
Are-
to think of where he started and then where he ended was really strange.
Yes. Though I think even then my parents were like, "Yeah, you knew it was a cult. Like you knew it was a little off." And apparently what he was also doing was our father was telling us, he's like, but even though it seemed like, oh, he's inviting these black couples in, what he was doing was going to the city, San Francisco, looking for people of color who were
Mhm.
struggling and saying,
Yep,
"Oh, here,
yep,
come up to Northern California," which is,
yep.
such a welcoming
Right,
place for
and
people of color.
presenting it under the guise of inclusion, right?
But
Yep.
really they're taking advantage of and doing
Mhm.
some, really shady. Yeah,
Yeah.
my parents were part of this because they were in the city in San Francisco and it was expensive way back in the early 70s. It was still
Mhm.
expensive then. And they were part of this group of like educated, kind of liberal people that were going to go back to the land. And so they went
Okay.
up there and that we grew up with a lot of other people that were also either around there or this
Did you
idea
grow up
of
on a commune? Are you telling me
no,
you
no,
grew
no,
up on a
no. But
commune? Okay.
no, no, no. We were far, even though it was a little hippy dippy, like we had a pool and we had like
Okay,
my father's
okay.
an attorney. Like it was
Okay.
he drove a Porsche. Like
Was he a
we were
polygamist?
no, no, nothing like that. But it was more of this idea of, let's move away. We'll raise our children in this environment where they
Yeah.
can be free and let's have gardens and do all this kind of
Yes.
very tie
Yeah.
dyeing. We did a lot of tie dyeing, those kinds of
I
things.
think there's a big movement towards that now.
Yes, there
Like
is. I mean,
this
the pandemic.
homesteading, like a
Yes.
homesteading type
A little
situation.
bit, yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of people did that with the pandemic. A lot of people were like, "I gotta get out of the city. I gotta do this." Then
Tess, I
now
was baking bread during the pandemic. I don't know about you.
no, I was a therapist in the pandemic. We were
Oh, you
doing
were
nothing.
busy. You were
Oh, we were
busy.
busy. We were
Yeah, yeah,
busy.
yeah.
Very, very
Yeah.
busy. So anyway,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, so that sounds interesting. So that's
Yes.
gonna be an episode you're gonna do?
Yeah, upcoming. We're gonna do a whole
Okay,
series
cool.
on Mendocino County and
Oh,
all of
that's
that.
awesome.
So,
And then when are you
yes.
gonna tackle Scott Peterson? I'm sure that's coming too.
Yeah, it's coming. I know that you all covered it. I think we
Oh,
wanna
I went
cover
down a
it.
rabbit hole with that. Oh.
Yeah. Well, I think the angle we want to take is sort of, which is my big question is what did the LA Innocence Project, what did the Innocence Project see that we're not
Mhm,
seeing?
mhm.
Like what's
Yeah,
going on?
right.
Why did they take this?
I'm gonna be
So,
following this case closely.
Yeah,
I
that's
need him to stay
fascinating.
where he is. I think he is where he belongs. All right.
Yes.
So
All right.
let's talk about weeks old news. Love is Blind.
But
So
it's not, like, every time I get on social
I
media,
know. I know.
it's not. It's like all
Tell
these people are doing is talking, talking,
tell
talking, talking.
everybody why you were late to our recording.
Yes, because I went down a rabbit hole of TikTok because I was like, "Oh, let me get the latest of Love Is Blind news since it's been a little bit." And then all of a sudden I looked up and I was, we were supposed to
She
meet
was
in
only
5
like 5
minutes.
minutes late, but I'm joking.
I
Okay.
got dressed fast.
All
But,
right.
yeah, but at the same time, are we hearing anything new? When I was going down the rabbit hole of TikTok, I'm like, I have not learned anything new, at all.
So I have learned some new stuff, which we'll talk
Okay.
about.
Okay, good.
But I also want to say we didn't really, and this was my choice that I didn't have you on to talk about the weddings because I'm like, it's kind of a nothing burger. And you and your sister covered it very well and in detail
Mhm.
over on Psych Legal Pop. But one of the conversations that to me was most riveting was Clay's parents,
Oh
correct?
god, yeah. Oh, yes.
I was
Yes.
here for that.
That was I mean, I don't think we've ever seen anything like that. Definitely not on Love Is Blind, but I don't think I've ever seen anything like that on television where I'm like, this is the most honest conversation these two people they've had in a long, long time.
Right.
And I think everyone could relate to it because you know, especially once you hit a certain age, you realize like everything is so layered. Everything in your family,
Yeah.
all your
Yeah.
experiences, why you feel the way that you do, why it feels difficult, right? And we have very complex feelings about our parents because they are people just like we are and they make mistakes and they are not fully formed people, they're developing and growing when we're born and so we have all of these layers to ourselves and we know so
Mhm.
much more now about past about generational trauma and how that passes down and
Yep, and that's
and
what we were seeing. That's what we were
yes.
seeing. Like, Margarita, God love her, she is the
Oh,
champion of this entire
yes,
series.
she
She
is.
was like, first, we didn't know that she knew. We didn't know that she knew that Clay knew about the bang trips, right? Like, we didn't know about this.
Well, and that's what I was wondering. I was like, did he tell her during this because he was like, I revealed this and I
I
need to
think he
tell
did.
you?
I think he
Okay.
did. Because
Yeah.
she seemed like here's my guess, just being a mother, my guess is she knew.
Yeah.
But she was hoping against all hope that he either didn't remember or misremembered it or you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And once she found out that he knew, she was like, okay, I guess
Yeah.
I need to confront this. Like I need to
Yeah.
talk about it." And the way see, first of all, that father with Clay.
Oh god, he was a
Oof.
piece of work. Another
Oof.
Trevor.
Oof. Just
Yeah.
the narcissism just spilling out of him.
Yeah.
And then to see her just kind of shut him right down. He was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I found you." She's like, "Yeah, you found me, but you treated me like a piece of shit." I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
"Margarita was my hero." Okay, so
Yes.
that's really it. Johnny and Amy, blah blah blah. They're happy. Clay does AD the biggest favor of her life, even though she
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
know it now. And then,
Well,
of
and
course,
now have you
Jesse and
seen her?
Jimmy.
She's talking now, right? So what's so interesting is that now AD's saying, I see now and I yes, believe people what they say and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I really want to know how much of that did she really when is she coming to all this? Like I've heard her talk about it, but I would love to know like did you kind of know that in the back of your mind during the whole process, but you were caught up in it because she was still 100% like
Yeah,
she wanted to marry him and I like Clay. I feel for
I
Clay. I
do
think
too.
Clay has had what his father did was abuse and trauma
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
with it, but at the same time, you know, just seeing where Clay is today, it's been a year. I'm a little like, oh, Clay, you're not, you've made a
Yeah.
little progress, but not enough, really, because he's still making excuses for his father. He's
Yep.
still he's still kind of doing this. You're the love of my life. I love you. He's still talking in these grandiose
Platitudes.
way
Yeah.
platitudes. Thank
Yep.
you. That's the
Well,
word.
and the thing about her is she described herself as a fix-a-hoe. So from one
Mm-hmm.
fix-a-hoe to another, AD,
Mm-hmm.
all she sees in him is potential.
Yeah.
She sees that he sees, and Clay has potential above and beyond most men
Yes.
because he sees the problem, right?
Yes.
Most people don't even acknowledge there's a problem. Like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
even talking about? he sees the problem. He so desperately wants help, but he needs to understand that he can't get that. He can't have somebody save him. He has to save him. He has to
Yes.
do the work. But
Yes.
she's clinging on to that potential. And trust me, girl, it's not going to be realized. Like, you can't, just like he can't expect you to save him, you can't save somebody else. They
Yes.
have to meet
Absolutely.
you. And AD, you are like, she just deserves so much better.
Oh
But
God,
I
yeah.
understand, and I do think that Clay has he's worth saving, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, he I think can be a fantastic human in, like you said, a year of really hard work.
Yeah, I mean a couple years. Like I mean
Couple
I
years.
feel
Yep.
like he needs a bit of time. I think the other thing too is that it's work in the sense of you need time because Clay's really got to confront the stuff with his father. He's got to start hating his father a bit. Right? He's got
Yeah.
to go through the process of hating his
Yeah.
father and then maybe there's a year or two of that. And then he's got to get into the place of like, okay, I've got to love my father for who he is. I can be upset and angry with him and not
Yes.
agree with him on these things, but I can also love him for this and these are my boundaries and it's a lot of work. It takes a bit of time.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and I know I went through it too where you kind of have to get through those places of being angry and it's very normal for adult kids to be angry at their parents for a little while for various reasons and just
Absolutely.
kind of
Absolutely.
like parents need to sort of sit with it and write it out and trust that like your kid will get through it because there's lots of rebelling as a kid, not
Yeah.
just when you're little.
I totally agree. So let's talk about them at the reunion. So they come out. We don't know if they're together or not. There was that
Yes.
video that surfaced that they were together at Thanksgiving, but apparently that
Mhm.
means nothing now.
Yeah.
Um, he is giving her, again, just talking in this word salad, right?
Yes.
And he's telling her that she's the love of his life, like you said, and he made a mistake and da da da. And Nick and Vanessa, they come right out and ask him, like, did your dad apologize to you yet? And he's like, in his own way.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope. So your dad did not apologize.
Yeah.
And Clay has been taught to idolize his father. That is the only acceptable relationship his father will allow him to have to him.
Mhm.
I am your golden statue, and you need to just worship me on all levels. And Clay doesn't know how to break that down. But then the interesting part is we learn that he was looking at Brett and Tiffany. Remember,
Mhm.
he was saying, like,
Yes.
"Oh, I
Oh,
was
yeah.
watching Love
Yes.
is Blind," and so he was looking at Brett, and I talked with Amanda about this. Like, Clay seemed very uncomfortable being vulnerable in that moment with Brett. Like,
Mhm.
if you watch his body language, he was very, like, puffed up chest, like, guarded,
Mhm.
and almost like he didn't wanna have the conversation. And Brett's out there, like, crying, and Tiffany's
Yeah.
crying, Amy Archer's crying, and Brett's like, "I didn't have it." Like, Brett is somebody who's done the work,
Yes.
I
Oh,
think.
I love Brett.
I love Brett too.
I
Oh my
love
god. Love him.
Brett.
Love him.
Love Brett. Love
I
Brett and
love Tiffany
Tiffany.
too. Mhm.
I love the 2 of them together. I wanna be their friends. I
But
love
just
them.
them having that conversation about black men and
Yes.
emotions, I could have watched that all fucking night.
Yeah. And I think that's what's very interesting about this. I think we're seeing things that we don't get to see. We don't get to see. And I think that Clay did bring up a lot of really important points to the fact that, I don't have that many role models. And when I look into the media, this is what I see. And, and what I see is that in many ways, right, it's acceptable to cheat on your partner, right?
Right.
It's I've been told that it's part of our culture, it's part of this, it's part of that, right?
Mhm.
So I thought all of that was so fascinating to watch and so important, and I think that it did give us a glimpse into something that I wouldn't have seen otherwise, and I think
Yeah.
it's really really it's compelling and important and all of those things, and at the same time, yes, you can see the differences between 30-year-old Clay and 38-year-old
Right, Brett.
like,
Yeah.
Brett,
Yep.
where you're seeing sort of what that is. Like if you put in that time and energy and work into that. Again,
Yeah.
though, I think that maybe Brett's situation, which is very different, like I think Brett didn't have any role models. So what Clay's battling against is I have a role model, but I need to think about this differently versus someone who I have no role model, so I've got to go find it.
Right. Yeah.
So I think Clay's got a little bit more to do for himself in terms of what Brett's had to overcome, but he can get there. It's just that people usually just don't want to do the work because it's hard.
No, that's a really good point. Like, I talk about my dad a lot on the show because my dad had a very problematic father role model growing up. And my grandfather, like, he was a drummer in a jazz band. He toured in the USO shows. And when he died, we had to have two funerals, one for his other family and one for us. And he was just
Oh,
real,
my.
And my dad grew up seeing that. And I do believe that if you don't find nuance, you do one of two things. You either repeat it or you rail against it and go completely the opposite way. So my
Mhm.
dad's philosophy to parenting has always been, I'm going to do the opposite of what my father did. And that has worked for us, but I feel like it has been at my father's expense to some degree because he also isn't able to he does things out of guilt a lot. Do you know what I mean? I
Mm.
should do this. I should do
Mhm.
that. I should go here. I should be at every game. Whatever. And a lot of times his own personal wants and desires are just in the background because
Hmm.
he has this knee jerk reaction to
Mhm.
doing the opposite of what he saw as a bad example. So I think
Mm.
therapy and working through it or whatever, faith,
Yeah.
however you work through it, helps you to find that middle ground, right? Like it's like I don't want to follow this role model, but I also, need to be my own person in some way.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like your father, I don't know how much you wanna get into this, but I'm just curious,
He doesn't fucking listen.
but was the feeling that you felt like your father, there was like this feeling of that you started to feel guilty, or you felt like he was there and showing up but he wasn't happy to be there?
I think so. I think sometimes, yeah. Like my dad was never my like we were in dance. He was at every single dance show, but
Mhm.
I don't think he wanted to be there all the time. It's a
Mhm.
lot. And
Yeah.
I think my dad is inherently like he's an artist and he's very like he can be very insular. Like he likes to spend time just kind of painting and doing his own
Mhm.
thing. And I think that I think as I got older, I certainly felt that a little bit. And it
Mhm.
made me feel sad for him because I was kinda like, I would have liked to have seen him be able to do maybe things. I think he stayed married him and my mom both stayed married too long to each
Mhm.
other in an unhappy marriage for that reason. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? So, like, I just think it colors your decisions. You're not being authentically who you want to be sometimes when you're just railing against a
Yeah.
certain stereotype that you see or an example that you don't wanna repeat.
Yeah, because I think the thing is that if your father had taken the time to think, okay, I don't want to repeat this pattern, so what does it look like for me? What is it that I want? Then even if he was showing up and he would prefer, because a lot of parenting, I mean, all of parenting is doing shit that you don't really want to do. So
Right.
I do wonder if it's like, is it? It sounds like it wasn't so much the act of him showing up for all your dance stuff, it was the energy at which he was showing up.
Yes. Yeah.
Whatever energy you
Yeah.
you felt, whatever he was feeling in that
Yep.
moment. And I think that's the other part of it that parents don't understand. I've had to learn it because my son has a lot of anxiety, and I
Mhm.
would always be trying to talk to him about something. He's like, "Stop yelling at me." And I'm like, "I'm not yelling." But you
Oh,
realize
yeah.
like, "Oh,
Yep.
I'm a loud talker, and
Yep.
I'm like heightened, and this is how you're experiencing me right now, even though I'm not angry, you're experiencing me as angry." And so as a parent, that's another layer to the many jobs that you have, is recognizing like, what's my energy when I come to my kid? What's my,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's going on with me that's preventing me from being present for this child? And that's a tremendous amount of work.
Right,
I mean,
like a good example is my dad hates to travel. He has a lot of anxiety around travel from when he was a kid.
mhm,
So he hates to travel, but he felt like he had to go on these little like we'd go the Jersey Shore every year.
mhm,
Felt like he had to go. And like
yeah,
in retrospect, I just feel so bad because I know he was really pushing himself to a place of discomfort. Do
mhm,
you know what I mean? Where it would not have been a big deal if my mom was like, "Oh, I'll take the girls to the beach and we'll just do a girls trip or whatever." But it's like I think, I don't know. I don't know why I'm bringing up my dad into this, but it strikes me as my dad is somebody who had a very similar example to who Clay had as
mhm,
a role model, but he went the opposite way, if that makes
yeah,
sense. And I feel like
yeah.
you need to kind of be in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the part that's so hard, right? Is it's everything we can, hindsight's 2020. We can only
Yep.
connect the dots looking back,
Yep.
right? Like I think that obviously if your father had, maybe if he was I don't know how old he was when your parents got married and started having
Oh, he was
kids, but
only
I
19.
yeah, so I think that
Yeah.
if he had
Yep.
more time, and I
Yep.
think he could have figured some of these things out,
100%.
but at the same time it sounds like his it came from
It came from a
it
place
came
of
a
love, and
really
he was a
yeah.
wonderful father. But it's like, as you see your parents as adults and
Mhm.
you see things in hindsight, I'm like,
Mhm.
I wish he was just a little more authentically who he wanted to be. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And it kind of makes me sad. Anyway, that's Amy's
Yeah.
therapy corner. Thank you. Next week, we'll tackle my mother. We'll need about 18 sessions for that. Girls and their mothers. So let's talk about Jeremy and Sarah
Ugh,
Ann. Ugh.
Jeremy,
He
God,
comes
that
out
guy
looking
is a
like Don Johnson, right? 1984.
but you know what? It's like to the detriment you want to just keep nagging Laura, don't you? You just want to keep poking her and
Oh,
poking her and poking her to the
yes.
point where you're going to look like an idiot because that is the dumbest outfit. I
Yep.
mean, there were some
Yep.
doozies of outfits that we saw on this finale, but like,
Yeah.
whoa, that was hands down the worst because you knew where it came from. You knew where it came from. So you're kind of like, Jeremy, we see you. We see that you're doing what you're doing right
There is a camera, Jeremy. We can see you. And then so
now.
so they're like, "Oh, are you seeing anybody?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm seeing somebody." And of course, Sarah Ann comes out. She's dressed like 1997 prom. I don't know what's
Yes.
happening there.
Oh yeah, the
The
body
glitter was
glitter.
distracting.
I felt really bad because I was saying to Brooke, I said, "So where do you go? The people wear glitter. I'm sorry, but like, there's few places where one wears full on body glitter. But apparently, this was because I'm older, not a millennial. But apparently, this was like Bed Bath and Body Works like had a all
Oh,
over body glitter thing that you
okay.
could buy. So I didn't know that existed.
Nobody
I didn't
wants to
know
see this body accentuated, so I don't put glitter anywhere near my body.
but it's just like, you're putting glitter all over your body?
Yeah,
Anyway,
and the
those
hair, I don't know. I don't know.
oh, the
The
hair and all
choices.
of it.
She's a
Yes.
beautiful girl. The choices were not great.
Yes,
So
yes.
they live together. He's wearing his Apple Watch. If you'll notice, we're all like, dun, dun,
Mm,
dun. Laura has been in Spain for business, so
yes.
she's
Oh, yeah.
like I like to say, via satellite,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And when Laura comes out, Sarah Ann says to Jeremy, "Do we clap?" And he says, "No." Oh, you got us good, Jeremy. You got her good. So they talk a little bit about that woman that said that she was previously engaged to him. He's like, "No,
Mhm.
no, no. I was already out on my own." He was probably in his new apartment for 3 days and applied
Yeah,
for Love is Blind.
and when I was going down the TikTok rabbit hole, I
Oh, good.
tripped upon the, who are the it's, Natalie and Deep D that do the
Yes.
Out of the
Out of
Pods,
the pods. Yep.
and one of them was talking, I think it was Deep D was saying, "Oh, when I saw his apartment, I was like, oh my God, he is so clean. This is what I
Mhm.
aspire
Mhm.
to." And then they're like, "Oh, wait a second. He's so clean because he's only been there for 5 minutes." Like he, you know what I mean? It's like he
Yes.
he he
Yes.
might have just walked in and been like, "I need a fully furnished apartment." He put his bag down, put up some
Yep.
clothes, and then ran for the airport to go to Love Is Blind. And it was like, "Oh, you're fooling everybody yet again. Maybe you don't like dishes in the sink, but are you as clean as this? Because apparently
Yeah.
not."
Yeah. This guy, I liked him when I first met him because
Mhm.
I have a terrible picker. We all know it's broken. And it just lives inside of me in two pieces.
Mhm.
And I liked him. And then by
Mhm.
episode 3 or 4, I was like, wait, what's happening here? Of course I hate him. But
Yeah.
he doesn't know what to do with himself. He doesn't know how to be honest. He
Mhm.
doesn't know how to, he's just like, he's so angry at the world. He's so
Yes.
pissed off. I feel like there's an underlying something with him that's like I don't want to allegedly, I'm just, speculating here, but I feel like he doesn't have a great opinion of women in my
No,
and I think Laura
yeah.
was too strong of a woman for him.
Yes, my theory was, and I actually who also had the same theory because I was listening to Reality Gaze. They had because they had this woman Demona who I guess is a
Oh, I
relationship
loved that
expert.
interview. It
She
was
was
great.
great,
Yes.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yep.
And um she said the same thing that I said. We said this independently of each other. I didn't take this
Mhm.
from her, but I said to Brooke on our show, I said, "I have this feeling that Jeremy wasn't very popular growing up, that he was kind of nerdy, kind of dorky. Women didn't really pay a lot of attention to him. He was sort of pushed away. And that like he got into college or no, he didn't go to college. Like he got out of school and he
Found
like
success and
he
did
found some
okay, and
success
yep,
and
yep.
like lost a little weight, worked out,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
just grew up like as we all do
Yeah.
and started to look good, and then women were paying attention to him. And I think that his sort of sarcasm that was part of who he was when he was young, it kind of became part of who he,
Mm.
is as an adult,
Mhm.
and that he's never really, he's still angry at women, angry at them for rejecting him, angry that they're only, do you
I
only
see
love
that.
me now that I'm attractive? And listen, I'm sorry, but that's a little bit of how the world works. Like, I was heavier as a kid. I lost a bunch of weight and the world looked at me differently. Like,
Of course, I
guess
wrote a
what?
whole book about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
I mean, and so you can either decide to be angry about that and angry for that, or you can decide, like, there's a certain level of when you feel good about yourself, when you feel attractive, that's how the
Right.
world sees you. If how much of that is connected to how you look is really up to you and how you perceive that, right?
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
yeah, so I just feel like there's a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of yeah, and Laura was very strong. I think it really pissed him off when his old tricks didn't work. Like, I sent her flowers, I tried to talk to her, and he
Oh,
claimed like
yeah.
she
Oh,
sent me
yeah.
really quote unquote mean abusive texts. And I'm like,
And Laura's
like,
like, "Bring the texts up. Let's see
yeah.
them."
Yeah, and I think they
But he
were
couldn't
like,
do it.
"I do not wanna speak to you. You are a liar." Right?
Mhm.
That was the text. Like, "Do not wanna
Mhm.
speak to you. I do
Yep.
not want your flowers.
Yep.
Please do not do that. We've gotta just let's move on."
Yeah.
And I don't think it was until when really everybody got together and said, "Listen, this is Laura's talking about her grandmother. My grandmother flew in. This is my real life. This is embarrassing. This is it." That he really got like, but it wasn't that I need to apologize. It's like, oh, what I need to do right now is apologize because that's what's going to make
Right.
me look the
Right.
best. But he
Yeah,
still
and
doesn't believe he did anything wrong.
and that's kind of what Laura said. I almost called her Laura Ann. That's what Laura said. Like, she's like, "I expected you guys to come out here with some humility
Yeah.
and just be like, you know what? We're happy, but it sucks." And did you get this? They who was it? Oh, it was Chelsea, said she ran into him a few times, and
Hmm.
every time she ran into him, they had broken up. That was
Yes.
like news to Sarah Ann.
Yes.
She
Yes.
did not have that information because she like wings her head around and is like, "What? Say what?"
Yeah.
And
Because
I
I
was like,
think she thought they were just in fights. And maybe he was
yeah.
like, oh, we're broken up. Or, yeah,
Well,
there
we
he
know
is.
she told AD that he had told her. Help me. Okay. He told Sarah Ann that he was breaking up with Laura, and then Sarah Ann conveyed that message to AD at the lake
Hmm.
party. So, like,
Yes.
we know that he does that kind of shit. Like, "Oh, I'm breaking up. Oh, it's over." You know what I mean? Even though it's really not. That's not the reality. So, I have
Yeah.
no doubt that he's telling Chelsea, hope, maybe with the hopes to hook up with somebody else. Like, "Oh
Hmm.
yeah, we're done. I'm done with Sarah Ann." But like, Sarah Ann's probably
Yeah.
at his house, like, waiting for him.
Yeah, but also but I think that's why he and Sarah Ann are cut from the same cloth, because I think that same thing was that Sarah Ann, because in my TikTok rabbit hole I saw that scene where Sarah Ann goes to Laura and says, he picked
Yes.
you, and Laura's very, Laura wasn't my favorite person, but I think she was very classy in the sense that
Sure. Sure.
she was like,
I
you
agree
deserve
with you
someone a
about that.
thousand.
She wasn't my favorite either.
But she went to her and said, you deserve someone 1,000%. And
Mhm.
just like, not, she didn't want to make it this competition. She was just really saying, like, woman to woman,
Mhm.
I want you to have this too. And then I think Sarah Ann's parting words were like, yeah, I'll have my moment. And
Mhm.
then the moment
Mhm.
is, and then someone plays the jet skis, right? Like, that's my moment. And I'm sorry, but like, it was shady of her to text that email. I mean, send that message. I mean, she could have very said, great meeting you, great experience, I wish you all the best.
Yeah.
That is one way to leave the door open, but you could have left
Yes.
it open in a real
Yes.
neutral way. But like,
Agree.
this was, whoa, you
Yeah.
really aren't leaving. You don't want Jeremy to read between any lines at all. You need to put it right out there.
Hey everyone, stay tuned. Little Miss Recap will be right back after these words. It really irritated me that we did not see that scene during the episode because it just like I would have liked to have seen that Sarah Ann actually approached Laura and
Hmm.
said, "Look, I'm sorry for what happened, blah blah blah." Like I feel like they, I wrote about this in my newsletter today. Like they just gave the editors just fuck with us and create their own storylines. And I know that's
Hmm.
not new, but Love is Blind does it almost like to the biggest extent where they are coloring like how we see people. Like that would
Hmm.
have helped me to have some empathy for Sarah Ann. Not much, but a little modicum of respect.
Yeah.
And yet, like, we just see her fucking off on jet skis, and that's what we think, like, okay, clearly she doesn't give a shit about anybody.
Yeah.
I hate when they withhold shit like that. I don't know why they would've. That would've been a really interesting scene
Yeah.
to
Well,
witness.
but the thing is about the scene is even if I think it was in there, I still don't know if I would have thought, cuz the it felt like a very insincere apology.
I'm
It
sure it
still felt
was,
it,
but at
it
least she
felt
had the
very
guts to go
fake.
up to her. Like,
Or did she?
what we saw
I don't
what
know.
right, we don't know who
Or
initiated
did the
it, right?
producers force her to go do it and she's like, "Okay, I
That's
got to
true.
figure this out." Or did she
That's true.
think, "Oh, I'm on television, so god, I better play cleanup here. I better figure this out." I don't know. I don't understand these producers at all. I know there was a lot of criticism on the reunion and the fact that they didn't talk enough about Jimmy and Chelsea and
Mm.
I don't know about these reunions. Why can't they just be, is it only really an hour and a half? Is it really live? Do you only
I
have that
loved
much a time
I
to do
I
it?
liked this one compared to a lot of the others, but I agree
Mhm.
with you. Like, we need a lot more. Like, why do we get a 5-part 90-day single life tell all? And
Yes.
this is only an hour and 20
Yeah.
minutes. It was
Yeah.
wild. What did you think of Nick Lachey reading Sarah
Oh
Ann for
my
Filth
god.
about her videos?
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Because the producers on the show and they're pissed. They're really
Yeah.
really pissed. And I guess they all got together and said, "Okay, this has gone off the rails. It was started to happen in season 5. We're now
Yes.
really it's now season 6. It's off the rails and
Yeah.
we've got to start cleaning up and we've got to put the hammer down."
Yeah.
Because I think the thing is what I think in the past what's happened is that as the show was going on, and we all know as shows develop and people start to see their opportunities and you don't get people there for the quote unquote right reasons, we can see that happening. And then I think what happened was it was almost like the producers realized, like, oh, we have not set enough boundaries with these people, that
Mhm.
we need to start setting some right now.
Yeah.
Because before I think they were a little bit like, oh, okay, fine, you can post, you can do this, you can do that. And now they're like, oh crap, like these people are off the chain.
Well,
They're
and
just
now I worry about the opposite happening. Now I worry about all these people out there being like, "We want hot daddy Nick to come after us now, so we're gonna go on there and fuck around on purpose." Because let me tell you something, I'm not a Nick Lachey fan, but something piqued my interest in this whole thing. I
yeah.
was like, "Hmm, okay."
Yeah, I know. He got a little sexier, but
Little bit, little
a
tiny,
little
tiny
bit.
bit. Mhm.
I'm not a 98 Degrees fan. I'm too old to be a fan.
Me too.
I'm like
I
I'm
never
not part of
even
that
yeah, I
generation to
know,
even
I
care.
know.
So,
So let me ask you what you think about Trevor, because I thought this whole thing was performative. I thought
uh-huh.
they made him do this to see if they could somehow rehab his image because they wanted to put him on a different show or something. I don't know if it was perfect match. That was the rumor, but whatever.
Mm.
But I don't know.
I
I just feel
You
like
think they
this was
care about
performative.
Trevor that much?
I don't know. I thought it was a real weird move to have him there and bring him out and make him like confess his sins to the Lachey's, and then they decide whether or not they're gonna like
Yeah.
admonish his behavior. I don't know. It was
I
weird.
I feel like the producers might have tricked him a little bit, which
Mm,
is fine with me because he tricked everybody else. Which is, I think they said to him, "Hey, do you want an opportunity to come on the show? You can clear things up, you can put yourself out there, and you can do that." And I think Trevor thought, "Okay, maybe this is what I need to do. I've got to rehab myself." And I think that Trevor put together put together like a little bit of a 5-minute speech
mhm.
about what his reason was. I think he figured out what his story is. He put it all together and then he went out there and then they started doing the dramatic reading of the text messages between Vanessa and Nick, which was
Which was
great. Oh,
everything.
beautiful. And 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 I think then he was shocked. I think that was like, "Oh
Yeah,
crap." You're
yeah.
you it's one thing to sort of talk around this and then you can give your 5-minute speech about, "Oh, well this is what was really going on," and all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But it's another to sort of be confronted with, "I love you. I love you,
I
wait until I
know.
can't wait to marry you, blah blah blah." And then for him to be able to come up with his excuse, which I think was, we weren't very serious. He then tries to grab at that a little
Well,
bit.
and I'm so tired of this blanket excuse of we're toxic. I'm toxic.
Mhm.
Like, oh, it's not enough to just be like, "Well, we're toxic," or "I'm toxic," and that excuses all of your behavior. Like,
Yeah.
how about we have a toxic relationship and here's why that's bad and here's how I need to work on that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
so tired of this blanket, like, pardon. "Oh, we're
Yeah.
just toxic."
And I feel
"Oh,
like
okay."
this is like I'm sorry, this is like white man disease. I swear to God. It's there's a little bit of this, right? Where it's like there's so many of these men who have had such privilege. They've just, walked around this world where
Mhm.
your life is, your life has just been great. You don't think it's great, but you have no idea what the other side is like.
Right.
So you're bebopping around and there's this attitude of like, well, I just need to kind of like, oh, I'm sorry. And oh,
Right.
I'm
Right.
a bad boy. Like
Right.
spank me, this kind of thing. And I think Trevor thought he was cute and charming enough to be able to do that for us. And I think this is what's changing in our world. This is what's getting people angry is we're kind of coming at this from a different place now where we're going, we're sick of this. We're sick of these people that have all this privilege coming in and taking no accountability or responsibility. And I do think some of this is the world that we live in today, like how people feel about everything that's going on. Like
Yeah.
this is the stuff that's very, very layered about all of this is the world that we live in and how we feel about people being honest to us, right? The Kate Middleton thing is a great example of that, of like, I'm not
Yes.
even a royal person. And Brooke and I were
No.
yammering on about that
I
the other day
know.
for an
I
hour,
know.
just like, what is going on and
No,
what's happening? But
I
it's
agree
about
with you, though.
authenticity, right?
There's something about a lot of these men, and this is, you and I were talking a little bit about this last time, like, I see this on Married at First Sight too, but I think it is beginning to spill over into the women as well, but it's mostly the men, I think, who I just can't trust anything they're saying on
Mm-hmm.
camera. So when you do see someone that's authentic on camera, like a Brett from Brett and
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany, you're like, "Oh, thank God. Like we love
Yeah.
you."
Yes.
And we were all fooled by Trevor. Like we thought he was this, but then he comes out and you're like, "Oh, this guy can't act. He's trying to
Mm-hmm.
act and this is not working." I didn't need to see it. He
Yeah.
claims, my term broth. He had some
Yeah.
broth, he claims, and he's going to ride off into the sunset. Okay, whatever.
Yes. Yes.
Um, then I have Nick lectures everyone about how Love is Blind is to be taken responsibly. Oh, whatever. We did learn, just my notes on AD and Clay for 1 second. We did learn she went on dates with Matthew.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Yes, well, she had, she had a feeling about him. I don't know. I don't think everyone's like, "Oh, he's cute. He looks like Clark Kent." I'm like, I don't think he's cute at all. I don't think that he's like maybe if you saw him and he didn't talk at all and you saw him in a coffee shop, you think that's an
Yeah, he's
attractive
okay. He's
person.
okay. He has
But
serial killer vibes, in my
yeah, but
opinion. I can't get
I don't,
past them. Mm-mm.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And
not. He's gonna try to kill me when I'm hitchhiking. No. Mm-mm.
but so, which also I love, love, love AD, but also makes me think, oh, AD, what are you doing?
Well, I
What
think
are you
she
doing?
clearly she went on a couple dates with him and was like, no.
Yeah.
So right choice, right move there, AD.
Yeah.
Amy and Johnny completely boring.
Oh god,
Whatever.
yeah. Yeah, they
Done.
figured out the condom thing.
They're perfect.
They're having
Fine.
sex.
Whatever.
Great.
So I did want to talk about Jimmy and Chelsea because I feel like we were left not knowing
Mhm.
what is going on between them. We
Yes.
had to
Yes.
watch the journalism of ET Online, Entertainment Tonight Online, to find out what their relationship status was.
Yeah.
And that was that they tried to date a couple times, Chelsea said, and it just didn't
Mhm.
work. So they're
Yes.
done. But it
Yes.
was weird because they kept touching each other. And
Mhm.
he was clearly towing the party line. Like he was like, I'm not even looking at Jessica. Yes, she is beautiful, but I am not going beyond that because my loyalty is to Chelsea. Like he was real weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know. I had heard the rumors before the reunion about how like, oh, they're at a wedding together. And apparently
Yes.
they were at this
Yeah.
wedding, but they weren't quote unquote together.
Mm-hmm.
And when he put his hand on her hand, I got the sense that the two of them were just like, we've been through hell. And so let's
Maybe.
just stay strong together
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But the fact that we spent a lot of time, they were a big storyline and we really didn't get, what the resolution was, where they are, how they feel about each other, how Chelsea felt
Nope.
about what happened. I mean, because Chelsea was trying on dresses. I can imagine if I was Chelsea, I would have been, I mean, I don't know what's worse, being left at the altar or being left at an amusement park. I don't know. What's what's but
Right.
like
At
she
least
didn't
if
get
you're
to
at
put
the
on the
altar,
white
you have your
dress.
family there.
Yeah,
So,
or you look pretty and you got to put on the
at
dress you
Carowinds, you're
tried
crying
on.
behind the tilt-a-whirl. Jesus
Yes.
Christ. um, I will say this. So, you know how I was telling you last time, like, I feel like there's more going on behind the scenes that she was
Mhm.
responding to. Did you see her on a podcast telling the story about the big fight?
I've seen little pieces of it, and I've heard her talk about various other things, like about the whole Megan Fox thing, and that
Mhm.
apparently
Mhm.
apparently a lot of them were like, "I look like this, I look like that," and
Of
she had said a
course.
few other people, not just Megan Fox, that I look like Adele, I look like Katy
Yeah.
Perry, like that apparently it is that people were drawing pictures of people, like the whole quote unquote love is blind thing isn't so she was saying, Chelsea was saying, you need to have some rules for this.
I
But
agree.
and she's right. Um, but no, what was the final story?
Okay. So, and I don't know again why this did not come out on the reunion. So
Mhm.
she's on a podcast and she says the night that they had the big fight where she was saying to him, I don't want you to go out. I don't want you to be somebody.
Mhm.
And then you fucked her. I know you fucked that night. Okay.
Mhm.
Apparently, what had pissed her off so much was the night that he had gone out, quote unquote. He said to her, "Is it okay with you if I go stay at my townhouse?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to go out for a wine night with the girls. I understand you want your space." She says, "I think that's healthy. Go
Mhm.
ahead, go spend the night by yourself." He calls her. He's fucking FaceTiming her. He's in like pretending he's going to bed, like, oh, yawning, you know? Then he pocket dials her by accident 2 minutes later, and she could hear all the friends are there and they're talking about what bar they're going to next. So he fucking lied to her and then went out.
Mm.
And that's what she was reacting to. Like that was part of it. Now, did she
Mhm.
overreact wildly still? Of course. It was wild.
Mhm.
But I think like she just had this feeling that she was almost being gaslit. Like he was just lying to her constantly. And
Mhm.
I think that's fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I it is. And so you do wonder, like, was that edited to make like why was all of that taken out?
I don't know because they were giving Chelsea the crazy edit.
Yeah.
This is what they
Yeah.
do. And like that pisses me off because
Yeah.
women be crazy. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it
Yes.
ugh.
Yes.
Like
But
seeing them have that conversation and then her arguing with him about it,
mhm.
I feel like that would have been interesting. I would have liked to have heard what he said, but like I feel like production chooses who's going to be the hero and the villain and they gave Jimmy the hero edit.
Mhm.
And
Do
it
you
was
really think he
crazy.
got a hero edit though? I
I
mean, I
think
don't
he
know if
looked a
that was a
lot better than
hero
she
edit.
did.
Yeah, yeah, he did. I mean, I'm with you. I think what's so hard about this is that right, both things can be true, which is
Yes.
is that I think Chelsea was a lot, and
Yes.
I think that the production was trying to kind of capture like, ooh, this is a lot. This is a
Mhm.
lot.
Mhm.
And at the same time, yes, when you omit really important facts like that, then yeah, it does make her look a little bit crazier than it's what's really happening.
Yeah,
I think that Chelsea just never did herself very she never did herself any favors with her arguments. I think
I
that was the
agree.
problem.
I
Like the
agree.
arguments were and then the fact that I'm sorry, like I knew that was a bridge too far when he because the thing is that whether or not you think that she had the right to reveal that on camera or not, that is about I'm sharing something with you and if I can't trust that you're going to follow through, then
Right.
and you have so little time to build trust with someone. You have so little time to build trust
S
so this is one where it's like it's not like you've had years of trust and that you did this. It's like
Mhm.
this is like the one shot you had and
Do
you
you think
really
that he
blew it.
should have waited until the experiment was over to tell her?
About the that he slept with the other
Yeah.
woman?
Yeah.
No, I think that he was trying to be that's the thing. If he hadn't told her it would be bad, if he did I mean,
Right.
like I'm sorry and maybe we all have different opinions about this and people have different opinions about female friends. Like the reality is that people are going to cheat if they want to cheat. If he wants to
Yeah.
keep sleeping with his friend, he's going to keep
Yeah.
sleeping with his friend. Like you cannot
You can't
wonder
control it.
and
You
worry
can't
and
control it.
control all these things. So I
It's
think
not
he
in
was
your
trying to
within your
yes.
behavior, your control.
And I think he was trying to be respectful in the sense
Yeah.
that he was saying, like, hey, I just want to give you the heads up. We did have this relationship. I do not want you to talk about it on camera because it's not about me, it's about her.
I do too.
And
I
that's
think
it.
it was a pretty big bombshell though. And I
That
think
oh,
here's what I think. Here's how I
okay.
think he could have made it better. Tell her the information like he should have.
Mm-hmm.
Ask her to not talk about it on camera, but don't go out to the bar with that girl until like
Yeah.
it's over. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just stay home for like 6 weeks or
Mhm.
whatever. Or if you're going out with her, bring Chelsea.
Yeah.
Like, don't go out alone with this woman
Mhm.
until, because same could be said for her. She has to build trust with him. And how does
Yeah.
she trust this situation? She doesn't yet. You know what I mean? So she's reacting as well. Like, here she has, you lied to me, and now you're out with her, who I
Yeah.
know you slept with. Why are
Mhm.
you lying to me about it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like it goes both ways. So I think that this could have been handled way differently. But
Yeah, I can
you
see
know,
that. But it comes back to the same problem, which is that people have these problems all the time in relationships, and people have these fights, and then this
yep,
happens, and then you realize, like, okay, we need to figure this out. And the problem is they have so little time,
I
right?
know.
Like, so
I
that
know.
if you only have this one experience, then yeah, I mean, what if you're Jimmy? What do you do, right?
Right.
Okay, I guess I have to go based on this. And is it fair to Chelsea? No, but
Yeah.
it's part of this process, which again, I think that I don't know, obviously the two of them were not meant to be, because if they tried to date
Yeah,
after
no.
and it didn't work, then without the cameras, then it wasn't
Yeah.
meant to be. But yeah, I mean, maybe is it unfair of Jimmy to have taken this one moment and decided that's that? Well, then that's that. I mean, there's a little bit of like, this is who Jimmy is. Okay. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't explain her craziness, but it does explain when he would say something and she would go, "Well, you're responsible for this too. Like, you have a part
yes,
in this too."
yes.
Like, without the context of knowing he was doing these things, that
Uh-huh.
felt weird, right? It felt like
Yes,
she
yes,
couldn't
that's what I
take
kept pointing
ownership.
out. I was like, "That's
Yeah.
so weird." Yeah, why
Yeah.
does she
But
keep
now it
blaming
makes more
him?
sense.
It does make more sense, and at the same time, she really did need to stop saying "and you."
Yes, I
Like,
agree.
there is that piece of it too, of like,
So
yeah.
that's it. I have Brittany and Kenneth. She looks like an extra from Dynasty. He was
Oh,
doing
yeah,
principal shit. I forgot they were even there.
well, God, and she's such a beautiful woman. Why in God's name did she look like a mother of the bride? I'm like, she looked like she was
Well,
50
she's a
plus.
conservative Southern woman,
I
you
guess
know?
so. Just the
Yeah.
hair. I mean, if she just wore her hair down,
I
it would
do
have been a
like
little bit
her. Don't
better.
you like her? I do like her.
I
Yeah.
do like her. I
Yep.
do. I and I've heard various things. Apparently, have you heard this rumor that I never heard this before, but if you get engaged in the pods and don't show up for the wedding, like you don't do the wedding part, you have to pay $50,000.
What?
I saw this on again, my TikTok research this morning. I went down a rabbit hole and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that was a thing."
Oh my
That's the
God.
rumor, unless you get producers' permission.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
you cannot just say, "I'm not going to do it." Like, you
Hmm.
have to get the producer's permission, which is probably why you need to watch a breakup thing. And
Oh,
then
maybe.
apparently they
Maybe.
had broken up already, and what we saw was them reenacting the breakup, which is
Yeah.
why Kenneth was so, so nonchalant about it. Though I've seen Kenneth also say, "I'm sorry, this is how I processed, and I was really upset, but this is what
Yeah.
you saw."
Yeah.
I don't know. Those two, it was just
It was
like,
just a mismatch. I really like both of them independently of each other. But it was
yes,
just, they
yes.
just had zero chemistry, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I
Mm.
think again, and I think this is what we're seeing, right? They're good friends, and we'll see
Mhm.
what happens,
Mhm.
if they can remain friends, even if they're both dating. But yeah, it felt like their whole thing was, oh, we're aligned on all of these, on God and how we
Mhm.
see the world, that they
Mhm.
thought that would be enough for them.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep saying, everyone's like, is love blind? Is love blind? If Johnny and Amy can get married, if Brett and Tiffany can get married. And I still maintain part of love is blind. Like, love is blind, yes, to a certain point, and you also need to see each other and be attracted to each other. And it
Yes.
just so
And that's
happens,
a luck game.
yes.
Yeah.
And that is just roll of the dice
Yep.
of who that is. So, yes, you can fall in love with somebody to a certain extent, but you
Mhm.
can't really ever build a life with them.
Yeah.
So it's like your definition of what is love. Yeah, love can be blind, but marriage isn't. And long-term
Right.
relationships aren't.
Right.
So,
Yes.
you know.
100%.
Yes. Don't tell the
Um
Shays I said that, because Nick's
Oh,
gonna scold me.
Daddy Lachey is gonna
Ooh.
come for you, girl.
Tell me what's what.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to our coverage of Love is Blind. If you're here to hear our conversation about Garrison Brown and Sister Wives, stay tuned. That's coming right at you. I just wanted to give you a chance to dip out in case suicide or suicidal ideation are triggers for you. Please skip the rest of the episode. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, and enjoy this talk if you do decide to stay. But let's talk a little bit about Garrison Brown, because you guys cover
Okay.
Sister Wives.
Mhm.
I cover Sister Wives. You and I
Yes.
were communicating when it broke.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was devastating,
It was
and
it was shocking and devastating, and we're aware that we don't know these people, but when you've been watching them and talking about them and in their
yeah,
lives for so long, you do feel like you know these people. And as a parent, that is hands down the worst thing that could ever happen. That is your worst fear.
100%.
That is
And I've
always
been
your worst
anxious
fear.
to talk with you about it, like, not, I do love when you put your little therapist hat on, but I'm not going to force you. But
Yeah.
like, it's interesting that we are having people are struggling, because I feel like there's a lot of kind of judgment going around, right? Of,
Mhm.
you know, this person's not grieving enough. This person's grieving in this way. Like Mary got a lot of heat for doing a Friday with Friends on Friday. And
Mhm.
it's like, you also have to understand that to some extent, this is their life. Like, this is work for them. This is
Yes,
how
yes.
Mary earns money, right? She
Yes.
keeps this kind of in the forefront. So I just kind of want to pick your brain about, like, grief can look different, right? Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can be quote unquote resuming your normal activities while still in a large state of grief.
Yes. And that's the thing about grief that people don't quite understand is that the first thing is grief is of what it is and what it isn't. Grief and moving on from a loss doesn't mean that you ever stop loving the person. You will
Right.
always love them. It just means that time helps you be able to live without them
Mm,
in their lives. And so how much this person is in your life day to day will affect you in different ways. So if you lose a friend that you don't see every day,
yeah.
it's going to affect you a little bit differently than losing someone that you do see every day, or maybe a neighbor you see every day, or your partner, right? Like it's your relationship with that person and how often you saw them and where you were in your lives when all of this happened plays a huge part in it. And the thing about grief is that there's the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, which is well known, documented,
The
like the
5
five stages of
stages. Yeah.
grief, and then there's also this belief of the sixth stage of grief around sort of healing and moving forward and paying
Mhm.
it forward, and I do believe in that as well. I think that is really important part of the process. But the thing is that you don't just, okay, I'm in denial, and now I'm sad,
Right.
now I'm
Right.
angry, and now I'm
Right.
bargaining. It's you go through this every day for you might be angry for several days, then you might be fine, then you
Mhm.
might be sad, and then you might be back to angry, and then you might be bargaining and angry and denial and acceptance all on the same day. And people have a hard time with this because they feel like, oh, they either think, oh, I should be over this by now, or why am I not feeling this? And the thing is that it looks different for everyone. It's going to feel different for everyone. And that, yeah, there are some people where it's not going to hit them for 4 or 5 months, or
Yeah.
the holidays, when you're like, this is normally when I
Mm.
see this person, and now
Yeah.
this is really hitting me. Or because I had mentioned before we were recording, I've lost two friends. I lost my college roommate when I was 27, and then I lost a very good friend of mine when I was 40 something, 46. Both at the same, they were both about the same age as myself. And it's very odd losing good friend, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's funny because people are like, why don't you go on girls trips? And I'm always like, because they're dead,
Yeah.
like my
Yeah.
girlfriends are
You
gone.
lost your
So
girlfriend. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is that and for me, it's very much like neither one of these people were in my life on a daily basis. So when it hit me hard, but it's been very up and down over the years
Yeah.
of hearing a song, remembering something, being back in time. And so I will feel like I am back in that first day of learning about them passing away very easily now, 20 some odd years later. And that's what happens
Wow.
for people.
Yeah.
So it isn't, and then I'll have days and weeks and months where I'm fine and I'm bebopping along and all of these things. So there is no right or wrong way of grieving. It looks different for everyone. It doesn't end after a couple months. It is a long process. It's most acute in the first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that there's different kinds of people passing. When people pass, it's hard because there's complex trauma. I mean, there's complex grief, and then there's grief and there's complex grief, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what happened with Garrison is complex because he was young, he was out of the norm, right?
Right.
So it's very different when
And
you lose a
I
grandparent.
and because of the way that he died, I'm sure.
Yes, and it's a
Yeah,
very
that
violent
complicates it.
death.
Mm-hmm.
And so when when a grandparent passes away, it's sad, and it's all of the
Sure.
feels and
Sure.
it's all of those things, but it's a very different feeling than when your child passes away, or when someone your own age passes away, and then losing them to cancer or some disease where you had the ability to grieve as
There's
you
anticipatory
go.
grief. Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And then you've got something like this, and suicide it's a violent way. It's
Mm-hmm.
violent, it's scary, it's all of a sudden, it's all of those things. And my very very first client that I ever worked with. So when you're in school, you start this practicum when you're in school. So they like, and you usually, they kind of just thrust you out there. And my very, very first client that I ever worked with, like in a room alone with, she was someone who her husband, they had a young daughter, and her husband, they were both struggled with alcoholism, and he had relapsed, and he had gone into the other room and shot himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing was actually that helped me was the fact that she just cried the entire time. So I just had to be there and like nod
Yeah.
my head and,
Right.
sort of
How
look
old
like
were you at this point?
I was, God, 30,
Wow.
30,
That's
so
a
I wasn't,
lot. Yeah.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
was,
you weren't 20, but still.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There are some
Yeah.
that do it, but it's, yeah, I mean, so it wasn't, I had already lost one of my friends by
Yeah.
then. So I
Right.
had some
Mm-hmm.
sort of sense of what was going on here, which is why I wanted to do the practicum. That's one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons. But And so, and I've had these kinds of clients. I've worked with survivors of suicide, people whose partners and
Yes.
parents
Yeah.
committed suicide, and doing groups like that, and the impact of how impacts everybody, because it's such a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that, this will impact and change everybody's lives from here on out. Like it's
Would that
never
be
going to
like
be the same.
vicarious trauma?
Yeah, probably. But I
Yeah.
think that I think Garrison, I think it sparks a lot of feelings for a lot of people. I think there's the core of the loss of a human being and how you feel. I think it's, for those of us who are parents and knowing what it's like. I just kept thinking about Janelle and
I
Christine
know.
and their,
I know.
this mother figure of what that would be. But really, I really keep thinking about Janelle and what
I
this
do
is like
too.
for her, and then the siblings and how this impacts them and their feelings. And then there's also, it's also, you have a lot of complex feelings about these people, because you can also be very angry at them of like, what did you do? Like,
Right.
and so, and that can make you feel guilty for
I think we
thinking,
look
what did you
for,
do?
I think
Right.
it is a human reaction to look for somebody to blame.
Yes,
Right. And
absolutely.
but you have to understand, like, the state of mind someone's in. And, I've been there. I talk about that in my book. I've been there when I was a
Hmm.
kid. You're not thinking straight.
No.
Right? Like, you're not
Yeah.
thinking logically, and there's a lot of factors, and so my point is there's no answer. Like, there's no
Yeah.
answer to be found, and
There is
that's just
absolutely
it.
no answer. And it's not about, I would urge people to just don't judge each other for how they're processing
Yeah.
it and
Yep.
doing it. Certainly there's been rumblings of people like, oh, they're making money from this and they're doing
Mhm.
this. And it's like, fine, okay. Is that my place to judge whether or not that's right or wrong?
Right.
No, I think you have to do what feels right for you. And that's really what I've seen with all the podcasters. And,
Mhm.
you know, there was been a little bit of communication with all of us who cover Sister Wives behind the scenes of like,
Mhm.
how are people feeling about this, and what do you plan to do? And I think that it really came from a good place of like, I'm trying to understand how I feel. Am I on the same page as other people? Do you and I align, with it? Do you and I align? And also looking for that validation,
Yeah,
because
and
it is very,
I think where we landed, a lot of us, is we're just gonna take our rage from Cody Brown momentarily and put it on Garrick Merrifield.
yes, something
Like,
like that.
just for now. just for now.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
but
And then
that's
see.
another thing. Like I feel like people are really judging one another for like, so say for example, oh, I want to go back and watch Sister Wives again. That's
Mhm.
okay. Some people are going to find comfort in that.
Yes,
You know what I mean? And that's
absolutely.
perfectly fine. And some people
Mhm.
aren't. And for me, it was a decision of the way that I talk about Cody and
Yes.
everybody else would not be funny for me, knowing
Mhm.
what they're going through. So like that was my
Yeah.
own personal decision. But will I watch Sister Wives again? I think I will. I think I
Mhm.
absolutely will watch it again. It'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see what they go, how they move forward through this.
Yeah. Because I think that's the other thing is right with these podcasts and how we consume media now. It's this weird thing, right? And it makes me laugh because right, we watch these shows and then I'll listen to like 15 hours of podcasts about this 1 hour of
We
television,
need 15
right?
hours of analysis over Cody and Janelle and Mary and
Yeah.
Robin sitting on a patio having a conversation. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yep.
but and at the same time, I think that each of us has, these things that we consume that we like. I think
Mhm.
that there are also shows that each of us consumes that we don't really listen to any commentary on. And then
True.
there's other shows that we listen to a little bit, and there's other shows that we listen to a ton of commentary
Mhm.
on. So
Mhm.
I think so much of this is about how do you consume this entertainment? How do
Mhm.
you take it? How do you take it in? And yeah, as someone who covers the show, it's so much of it is about it's about our relationship to the show and how we
Yes.
feel about it. And if something is off there, if we don't feel comfortable
Right.
talking about it, or something's changed, then yeah, it's the respect of the person that's putting out the putting out the
Right.
content to
Right.
decide how they're going to do it. And then it's everybody on the other side, it's your decision about what you consume.
Yeah, and it's
But
not it's not, some kind of virtue signaling. It's
yes.
honestly, I don't judge people for listening to pods that are covering. I don't any of that. It's just I can't be funny about it right now. That's all.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I still believe me, if I get a chance to crack a joke about Cody Brown, I'm going to, if it's
Yes.
appropriate. But
Yes.
I just can't go after him. You know what I mean? Like he's probably a
This
lot of
is
what we're
awful.
saying, he's probably saying it to himself. And, there's nothing you could say about Cody Brown right now that he's not thinking, I'm sure, on some level. Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe it is
maybe. I
Cody.
mean,
Who knows?
I don't, and I don't know. And so, what I was before, it was like, this isn't a mission statement anymore. This isn't
Right.
like, this isn't, and the show has very much been all about the relationship of this family and these adult relationships within each other. The
Yes.
kids are sort of this separate thing.
Yep.
And so that's why it's like, well, but how, it's one thing with Christine getting a divorce because this was about this adult relationship.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
now that it's about the kid, it's like
Yeah.
we're
I
we're
agree.
moving into this weird area, right?
I
Once
agree.
Logan was, off at college, we never saw him again, and it was like, yeah, we need to respect that. That was Logan's choice.
Mhm.
Like Logan's choosing to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, suicide is a very impulsive act. It's why a lot of young people do it,
Mhm.
and it is so difficult, and it takes so long for people to sort of suss out, because each individual person that knew that person needs to suss out and figure out, like, how am I going to think about this, how am I going to
Yeah.
process this, how am I going to move forward, and
Yeah.
how do I move forward loving that person and loving them and honoring them in the best
Mhm.
way that I know how, and how do I move forward without being angry and upset and sad and blaming myself, because the reality is that, like you said, everyone is looking for someone to blame. And that's what drives me crazy is, and you see this in businesses and relationships where everyone has to blame somebody. But it's like, you've just got to, the hardest thing is you've got to just let it be. It
It
is.
just has to
And
sit. Yep.
it just has to sit. You don't need to blame people,
Yeah.
and you don't need to blame yourself, and you don't need to blame other people.
Yeah.
And that part's hard. That's the shades of gray that people have a very hard time in, right? Like if we talk about Clay, like that's Clay's issue. Like he can't, it's
Yes.
hard. He cannot have a relationship with his father that's somewhere in between all those things.
Yeah.
And so we're asking a lot of people right now to like sit with this in between. And so that's
Yeah.
what you're seeing. People are reacting to that. Like, I don't want to sit with the in between. So F you, or F me,
Yeah. No, I
that
agree. I
kind of thing.
agree. And I do want everyone to understand, like, you have permission to grieve Garrison Brown, even though he's
Hmm.
like a person on television show. Some might say a character on TV show, whatever. it's, Janelle and Cody and Christine and Mary and all the siblings, like they need that energy and those good vibes. Send them
Yes.
100% prayers, whatever you believe in, do it. And don't feel weird because it's a TV show, because it's been part of our lives for a long time. And we
Yeah.
do have a relationship to them, and that's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay.
And the other thing too is they might, you also have to recognize if they do the show, right, you then have a choice whether or not you're going to watch it.
Yep.
And if they do the show, there's a little bit of, I mean, their livelihood has been wrapped up in all of this. Like,
Yeah.
if
yeah.
they do, I don't blame them. I mean, this is the curse of these reality shows.
Yeah.
Is you get on the show and it feels like you've struck gold,
Mhm.
but then you have to stay on the show in order for all the other pieces of your, livelihood to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we see with Housewives, and that's what we're seeing with, even Love is Blind had this problem too, right? With people getting fired and then not being able to find other jobs. And
yes.
you can't be angry, because the thing is that can Cody or Janelle or any of these people go in and apply for a job these days? Like, no.
Could you imagine Cody? I bet he could work at David Yurman Jewelry.
Oh yes, he could. He could
Over the
definitely
road.
work there.
All right, guys. And
Yeah.
also too, I just want to say, if you or someone you love is struggling with suicide, please call 988. That's the suicide hotline. You could text, you can call, you can, get them
Yeah.
anytime. And it's
very
important.
quickly, I've worked on suicide hotlines. And if you're someone who's interested in mental health, or if you think about, it's a great way to learn if going on a suicide hotline and working on it is a great way to know if you want to do it. But the flip side of it is, I think a lot of times people think you have to be actively suicidal to call a suicide hotline, and you don't. The majority of the people that called us weren't.
Good point.
A lot of times they were people who were lonely, needed someone to talk to. It was preventative for them to not get to that place. They needed some human contact. So if you're struggling with all this and you feel like I have no one to talk to, if you are, just feeling really low and you don't know what direction to go in, you do not have to be at this very, very low point. Even if you're just like, I'm curious and I want to see what it's like, call.
That's a very good point.
Just
very
call.
good point.
Just call.
You don't have to wait till you're in crisis.
Yes.
It's a very good point.
Yes. You should do the minute you have an inkling. That's when you should do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Oh, absolutely.
We said it all.
Yes, we've said it all.
This is what happens when you get two little sibs on the mic.
Yes,
our big sisters aren't here.
Yeah, I know.
To stop us.
Slap my hand and tell me I'm moving too fast, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. Yeah.
All right. Why don't you remind everyone where you are, what you're doing?
Yes. So,
and tell us about your therapy website if somebody wants to reach out.
Yes. So, the podcast is Psych Legal Pop, or Pop Psych. What did you call it? Legal
Pop Legal Psyche?
So it is Psych Legal Pop. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please come check us out. Yes, we are covering Seeking Sister Wives, and we cover documentaries. I'm a therapist. My sister's an attorney. And, much to people's chagrin, we don't always label things of this is a therapist talking. This is a therapist. But
it colors the way you see things.
Absolutely. You get an introverted, risk-averse person, like this lawyer, and then you get the free-for-all, empathetic, I believe everybody's telling me the truth therapist.
Yes.
So, and we have a very exciting announcement this Wednesday, so please tune in. We're very excited. And and you can check out me, Tess Brigham. You go to tessbrigham.com. I am a therapist and I speak. I specialize in working with young adults, Gen Xers, Gen Zers, and millennials.
I'll take young adults. Yeah. Thank you.
And so if you want to learn more about me, just go there. I do,
and they can follow you on Instagram, right?
Oh yeah, follow me on Instagram. I haven't been posting so much. I mean, I've been focusing more on LinkedIn, but for my personal stuff. But yes, you can follow Psych Legal Pop on Instagram or TikTok. That's me.
Okay. All right.
So awesome.
Well, thank you so much. You're my favorite therapist to bring out and talk to. And
thank you.
As promised, guys, next week we'll talk about my mom.
I'm here for it.
I just won't publish it, but it'll take us 6 hours. All right, Tess, thanks so much. And guys, stay tuned with us. Join our Facebook group, Backdoor Friends, if you haven't already. We got a lot of good stuff coming up this week. Stephanie and I, for some reason, decided to watch Hunting Housewives, a terrible Lifetime movie that I just wanted to burn my house down when I was done watching it. And then next week we're starting Virgin River. The rewatch. We're so excited. It's our cheesiest,
season
guiltiest
1?
pleasure. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I watched the first couple seasons, then I got rid of it.
God, we love it so much. Bring on the cheese. We love it.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.